Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us as we kick off KYSPIN's Family Engagement Celebration for the entire month of November. This is the first of 4 webinars that we will be hosting. If you have obviously registered for today, there's nothing you have to do to join the others. You can join them with the link that you joined today and have access to all of those. And if you aren't sure of the dates and times, if you just want to reach out to us or send us a note in the chat, we will be happy to send you the flyer so that you can get those scheduled on your calendar. Speaking of the chat box, you're going to have a chat box or maybe even a questions box to the right hand of your screen in that white box. You also have a handout section in that box, and in that section you have the PowerPoint for today's presentation. You do not have to worry about downloading it if you don't have time. It will be sent to you in a follow-up email. So before we get started, I would like to ask that you give us grace as we go throughout this presentation. You can guarantee that my dogs will probably bark because they do anytime I'm talking to people. We also know that technology does what it wants to the majority of the time. So if we have technical difficulties, which we do fairly often, and you can better believe that if I or Rhonda have anything to do with it, we usually have some sort of technical troubles. So please just bear with us as we go throughout this training. I hope you learn something new as we go through this, or maybe just it may bring something to your remembrance that maybe you haven't thought about in quite some time. So, like I said, today we're talking about collaborative communication, and my name is Kelly Smith. I am the Assistant Director at KYSPIN. I have been with KYSPIN for next month will make 6 years. I absolutely love my job. I love everything about it, especially the people and the families that I work with. Another thing is that when my son, who has a traumatic brain injury, and he is 25, when he was in school, I was not familiar with KYSPIN, or even before then. Obviously, I wasn't familiar with KYSPIN, and I apologize. I'm on. I'm dialing in, and I have another call coming in. So if it cuts out, you know why. So sorry about that. But I wasn't familiar with KYSPIN, and I always tell families that had I known about KYSPIN, I like to think that his life would look different than it does now. Because at KYSPIN, we have a wealth of information. We have so many community partners that we really are an asset to families. And most families are not familiar with KYSPIN. We also say that we're the best kept secret, but we don't want to be a secret. We definitely want to take any information that we can out into the highways and the hedges and give this information to all people so that we can be assistants for all those with disabilities, their families, and the professionals that serve them. So if this is your first time being at a KYSPIN event of any kind, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about us. So KYSPIN, that stands for Kentucky Special Parent Involvement Network, and we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our mission is to link families and individuals with disabilities to all the valuable resources in their community and statewide that are going to help them and enable them to live productive and fulfilling lives. KYSPIN is the statewide Parent Training and Information Project, or PTI, for the state of Kentucky. We are funded by the U.S. Department of Education, and that brings with it training, information, and support for children and youth with all types of disabilities, and that is diagnosed or undiagnosed, birth through age 26, their parents, families, and like I said, the professionals that serve them. We have been the state parent training and information center since 1988, when Kentucky first received a PTI. So one of the things that kind of makes us different from some of the other agencies and organizations that you might work with is that the majority of our board of directors and all of our staff and consultants are either an individual with a disability or a parent or family member of someone with a disability. So when you call Kentucky SPIN, you're not only getting, information from a professional, but you're also getting that information from someone who has and continues to walk in those shoes. So it's much easier to tell you what we don't do than what we do. We don't act as attorneys or advocates. We don't represent families. We don't give legal advice. But we empower families to effectively advocate for their children, and we do that in a variety of ways. So we may do that, through training such as this one, one-on-one assistance, just all kinds of different ways. There's all kinds of different ways that we can help these families and empower them. We also provide peer-to-peer support to help families access the needed information and resources that I was talking about. So, jumping right in to collaborative communication. So, what is it? So, collaborative means working jointly with others. And communication is a technique for expressing ideas effectively. And so, when we say collaborative communication, we're saying that it is to work jointly with others while effectively expressing ideas. And I just wanted to insert here that if you have ever been, especially to, say, an IEP meeting or something of that nature, sometimes you can leave those meetings and feel kind of bewildered. I never left one of those meetings where I didn't pull over on the side of the road and cry. Every single time I did it. And I thought to myself, I should have said this, or I should have done that. This didn't go the way I wanted it to. And that was because I didn't know maybe how to communicate as effectively as I should have or could have had I had that training. So I don't ever want families to feel that way. And so this presentation about collaborative communication is very near and dear to my heart. So we're going to start with some communication basics. The foundation to all good communication can be summed up in this one quote. First, seek to understand, then to be understood. This quote is by Dr. Covey, who is the author of several books, and one is an international bestseller, and it is titled 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So basically, it's important to understand, obviously, you want to understand where the person you're talking to is coming from, what their intentions are, and really focus on what they're saying. And then once you're accepting of that, then you try to become understood, for them to come to the same understanding that you have in regard to, listening and paying attention. We're going to talk a little bit more in just a moment about listening skills. And so you can set the tone before you even speak a word, and I'm sure we all know that, especially if we're parents of teenagers, right? The way you approach someone and the way you approach a situation can have a huge impact on the outcome of the situation. Even if it doesn't go the way you want it to, it can have an impact on the overall result. So communication happens in several different ways. Approximately 10% of communication is spoken words, 30% is tone of voice, and 60% is body language. So an example might be is if you say kind things, but you roll your eyes at the same time. So the person's not going to remember the words that came out of your mouth. They're going to remember your facial expression and the rolling of your eyes. So if we look at this slide, we're looking at different types of body language, and we understand that every action, even silence, is a communication. So you have this guy standing here in this suit, and would anybody like to put in the questions box or in the chat box what they think they're seeing by the different types of body language that they see on their screen? So I'll pause for just a second for you guys to interact. Confidence. And someone says, I can see a slideshow, but I don't hear anyone talking. Someone says, rich. So, well, I guess everyone else can hear me talking. So, Rhonda is on with us to help troubleshoot. Rhonda, can you reach out to Susan and try to help her figure out what the issue might be? The guy in the suit, powerful. He does seem powerful. What about the woman on the right side? What do you think her actions are saying? Oh, Rhonda, she says she can hear now. So someone feels like she's upset. Someone else feels like she's excited. What about the guy at the bottom? I seem to look like him. Okay, and somebody else said confident, celebratory, defeated, guarded. He's having a bad day. Someone said she probably just got a job. And then talking about the guy at the bottom says he looks stressed. So, and those are things we don't have to see anything. We don't have to have those things captioned, but their actions and their facial expressions, for those that you can see, say a whole lot about them. And again, we have that same power. Okay, so the importance of listening. And I told you we were going to talk just a little bit about this. So the key point here is to listen twice as much as you talk for effective communication. The key word there is effective. So we're taught all of our lives that communication is, 50-50. First, you talk, and then I talk. And then while you're talking, it's my turn again. And, then it's going to be my turn again. But while you're talking, I'm thinking of how I'm going to respond to you, or maybe I'm thinking about, what I'm going to do after work, or making a mental grocery list, or maybe I'm thinking about, what you're saying, and I'm thinking, well, how I'm going to respond to that. And maybe you say something and I'm automatically, my flags go up and defenses go up, and I'm like, well, I disagree with that. So I'm planning my argument in my head. All kinds of things can be going on while you're listening to that person, but you're not listening. You're thinking. When you're doing those things, you're not really paying attention to what they're saying. You're not actively listening. You're thinking. So communication is not just about talking. It's about really paying attention to what that other person is saying, being really intentional about focusing on the words that they're saying, and trying to understand where they're coming from. And that kind of focus on the conversation is called active listening. And so, like I said, for effective communication, you want to listen twice as much as you talk. So as you can see on this slide, the very first element of active listening is to be attentive. People are not actively listening when they're jumping to conclusions about what the other person really means or what they're saying. They maybe become judgmental because they don't agree with what that person is saying, like I said a few minutes ago. And sometimes people find themselves just shutting down. But it's important to really try to keep listening so that you can be sure that you haven't misunderstood what they're saying. And one way of making sure that you understand what that person means is to repeat it back to them in your own words or paraphrase it. So you want to be careful not to overdo it when it comes to paraphrasing, because you don't want people to become annoyed when every sentence they say, you say, so what I hear you saying is it. But you want to be able to sum up the conversation in a way that you understand it, just so you know that you have a clear understanding of what that conversation was. And so be aware, it's not just of their body language, but also your own. Pay attention to your posture, your facial expressions, and I'm one of those people that my facial expressions are hard to control. They happen before I even realize it. I know many, many women who are as animated as I am in their face. I've seen Facebook memes talking about how their face needs deliverance. It's all over the place, and we need to be really, really intentional about what our face says. It's not just the words coming out of your mouth and our body language. So you also, but let me insert this. You are going to want to be careful when you use eye contact with someone. Just be aware of the situation, because some cultures, eye contact is considered rude or offensive. So, take your cues from the person you're talking to. If they're looking you in the eye, then it's going to be okay for you to look them in the eye. But, really just it's a give and take with all communication, and eye language definitely falls into that category. And so these illustrations are cute, but they speak volumes. I look at this comic of this fellow reading his newspaper, and this woman saying, "You can stop saying, I stopped talking to you an hour ago." This reminds me of me and my husband. Of course, it's kind of flipped. I have mastered the art of saying and pretending to pay attention when I'm really not, and that's a horrible thing to even admit, but it is very true. And sometimes I will respond. I actually did it just last night. I responded to something, and he said I didn't even say anything. But because he had stopped talking for a minute, I thought it was time for me to give some kind of response. So the second one says, "I'm sorry, were you talking to me?" And that has happened more times than not in my house. And like I said, that one kind of illustrates me and my husband both. But that's not good. That's not good. These illustrations are cute, but they speak volumes. And when you're talking to someone and they aren't even aware you're talking to them, or if they respond to something that when you're not even speaking, that it's not okay. It's not okay. We want to be heard. Most of the time we aren't speaking just to say words. There's a meaning behind it. So we want to be sure that we're respectful and that we're, like I said, again, really intentional about paying attention to the person that we're communicating with. And I'm going to pause for just a second. Amber, I see someone maybe has their hand raised or some questions to ask.
I just sent you a message, Kelly. I'm actually not seeing anyone else's comments besides Jenny's.
Okay, so
perfect.
I am on this end. The comments, and I do know someone's having trouble. I was responding back about the comments that they can see comments, but you cannot comment. So that's why, and for some reason, it's one of those quirky tech things. And with this program, if you can't do that, no worries. Just participate in the questions area, because we're keeping an eye on the questions and the chat. And I'm not able, let me see, Ashley Donnell has her hand raised. If you could, I will send you, if you could send it through the questions or the chat. And just kind of let us know how I could help, because I'm monitoring that on the side here. So, but I do apologize about that, about being able to comment. in the chat. It's one of those lovely tech things that each program has its glitches, and for some people it works, some it doesn't.
And if you do see at the bottom, if you can change where you do type your question or comment to all entire audience, we will be able to see those comments in the box.
Thank you all. I appreciate you. And like I said, thank you for your grace. As I told you before, you can guarantee if Rhonda and I are involved, there's going to be there's probably going to be some issues.
And I do appreciate. And Ashley, I just saw, no worries. So Ashley's good too. We're all good. Hey, we're
Okay.
a work in progress together, which is what I love.
Kelly, you do have a question that just popped up.
Okay.
Can you explain how collaborative communication partners with ARC meetings?
Actually, I can, but I would like to save that until we go all the way through, so we can kind of put some things together. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next slide. So collaborative communication values and respects the opinions and perspectives and rights of both parties or all parties involved. Okay, so when people are, like I just said, in this kind of piggybacks on that, collaborative communication encourages both parents and professionals to be able to give honest feelings. So when people are not giving open, honest input, others are kind of left to draw their own conclusions. And those conclusions may be far from the truth and can result in unnecessary conflict. And then you have mutual respect, which occurs when everyone at the table acknowledges that each and every person has critical information to share. And I cannot express enough that as a parent, you have so much important information to share. And it's important, because teachers, and this kind of goes hand in hand with the question about the ARC or IEP meetings. Everyone needs to recognize each individual person's role at that table, and that goes for an ARC / IEP meeting. In Kentucky, it's synonymous. Or if you're in a doctor's office, I think we have time for me to share a brief story, and I'm going to kind of, condense it a little bit. And if you've heard it before, I apologize. But there was one time that my son was, and like I said, my son is 25 and he has a traumatic brain injury. And he was prescribed a medication. And at the same doctor's visit, we were then told that he needed to go to Lexington and have some testing done. And we said, okay. So we started the medication. It was a seizure medication. And I did know some background on that medication. And after he started taking it, I guess it was after he had been taking it a while. The side effects didn't really start until, probably a month in or more. But he became extremely violent. And my son is not violent at all. He's 5'7". He's 135 pounds. He's a little bitty guy. And he is not violent. And it came to a point one night that my husband had to restrain him. And he my husband, you know, is 6 feet tall and well over 300 pounds. And my husband comes upstairs and he's like, we have to do something because if he gets mad, he will really, really hurt someone. And so that, you know, we were very concerned. And so we stopped that medication. We knew that, you know, it could be dangerous to stop any kind of medication, you know, so quickly. But I couldn't let him go to school and get mad and hurt someone. And so I was very concerned. And so I made a call. And people can agree or they can disagree, but that was a call I made as a parent to stop that medication. And so 3 months later, we go back to the doctor, and they asked, you know, how's the medication going? And I let them know that I stopped giving it to him. And so they immediately became very defensive. Well, why did you stop? I told them why I stopped. And they're like, well, when did you stop? How did you stop? You know, why didn't you call us? And maybe those are things I should have done. I can't go back in time. I was doing as a parent what I felt was right. They were very upset with me. And they weren't trying to talk it out. Everything I would say, they would shut me down. The doctor and the nurse president in the office, they would just shut me down. And it was very, very hard. And I was really stressed out and near tears because, you know, I was doing what I thought was right as a parent, and they're telling me basically, you know, how awful it was, what I did. And I wouldn't have done, you know, obviously never done anything to hurt it. So we get through that, and it's still not an easy, you know, time trying to, you know, talk to them because they're mad at me. And I'm, you know, just kind of freaked out and panicked. And then they asked me about the tests that they had ordered, and I'm like, yeah, I took him, and they're like, well, there's no record of you being there. And I said, what are you talking about? We had to wait forever because they only had one machine, blah, blah, blah. It was in the ER. We were there all day. No, there's no record. And because they were already mad at me, they went ahead and made that judgment that I had not taken him and that I was lying to them. And that absolutely nothing was further from the truth. I took him. Everything, you know, we were there all day, just like I said. And then the nurse called me a bad parent, and she was going to call social services for medical neglect. And I came unglued. And, of course, as parenting professionals, we can probably all imagine, you know, how we're going to feel if someone attacks our parenting abilities. And then, you know, they're not listening to me. They're not, you know, I was talking to them, and they're just not listening to me. And it was so hard. My son was terrified. He was scared to death because we were about 3 hours from home seeing this doctor. And my son is like, my mom is going to jail, and I don't know how I'm going to get home. That was his only concern. He wasn't worried about mom going to jail. He was worried about how he was going to get home when mom went to jail. Because he was convinced that was going to happen, that me and this woman were going to roll, and I was going to jail. And so, I mean, how do you think that visit turned out? I can say I found something to prove that I had been there and kept social services out of my life that day, which was great for me. But, you know, that was a really, really hard barrier. And so we'll talk a little bit more about barriers in just a little bit. But I'm just going to kind of leave this there. If you can imagine how the communication was in that meeting after those two events at this one doctor's appointment. And let's see. I'm going to move on to the next slide. And then I'll pick up that story here in just a few minutes. But when parents and educators communicate collaboratively, they can develop a partnership, and that's really the way it should be viewed as an actual partnership that is focused on what is best for the child. You can still have differences of opinion. You don't have to always agree with one another, but you can always give each other respect because that's a choice. A hard one to make sometimes. Like when somebody called me a bad mother, I was not respectful, but that was a choice I made. I made that choice. I can say, that adrenaline took over or that, I let my emotions get the best of me. But, in the give and take of it all, I made a choice to behave the way I did. And at that point, it was no longer child-focused. When we were in the heat of that argument, nobody was focused on my son. I was focused on what she had said and was thinking about me, and she was focused on what I was saying and was thinking about her in that moment. And so as parents and educators, professionals, and individuals, our goals should always be the same. And that is to help our children or to help ourselves have successful outcomes. And the best outcomes occur when parents and professionals or educators can truly be partners in achieving that goal. And so we can all agree that communication between parents and professionals or between individuals and professionals is important, but who is it the most important to? It's the most important to the child or the individual involved. More so than anything, keeping that child the main focus is going to ensure the best possible outcome. And we can't let personalities deter us from developing those strong relationships. So barriers to communication. So some common communication barriers are a negative history. So it's important to not let the past hinder the current situation that you're dealing with. Then emotional responses. Emotions are natural responses to situations, but they can have a really negative impact on communication. So it's important, if at all possible, to check your emotions at the door to prevent miscommunication or a breakdown in communication. If things get too heated, if things get too emotional, don't hesitate to say, you know what, we need to stop right here. Things are getting a little crazy. Let's come back at another day and time, set an appointment to pick up the conversation rather than, acting like me and this woman having it out. And I mean to tell you, having it out. It was good for no one. Jargon and alphabet soup. So jargon and alphabet soup is really just using, for instance, agency-specific language or acronyms. If you are in an ARC meeting or, IT meeting, whatever, if you are in one of those meetings and you're hearing all these acronyms or language that you didn't go to college for, you didn't major in this in school, so how can you understand what they're talking about? Using that jargon and alphabet soup is really the wrong thing to do because everyone at the table may not understand that terminology or know what those acronyms mean, especially in kind of the world we operate in. Everyone has acronyms, and some acronyms overlap from one agency to the next, but they have different meanings. So it's very important that when you're talking, you're using friendly language that everyone can understand, and that you're really just not trying to use those acronyms. I always tell people, spell it out for me like I'm a 6-year-old. If a 6-year-old can understand it, I might have some hope. So please, I don't mean it. I don't mean it as a joke. Simplify it for me so that I can surely understand what you're talking about. And then another thing is fear of intimidation. When someone feels intimidated, it's hard to feel safe to communicate his or her or their child's needs. I could have easily been very fearful or intimidated when I was threatened with social services. I wasn't. I was infuriated. So, I guess that shows there could be a wide range of things that can happen. And I could have shut down. I could have become, hysterical because of my son's history with his brain injury. Before we knew what had happened to him, that was something that I had to go through. I had to go through the hospital calling social services because they didn't know what had happened. I had to go through all sorts of experiences that were traumatic to me, which is what triggered my anger. But it could have just as easily caused me to have a complete breakdown. So all of those things can become huge, huge barriers to communication. And so you can build up your own confidence by learning all you can before the meeting. Whatever kind of meeting you're going to, you want to get all your ducks in a row before you go. You can do this by hooking up with another parent, doing some research. You can check out books at the library. You can find out what workshops are available for, from KYSPIN or other agencies. And we can also, often help connect you to those. And if you just don't really know where to turn, don't hesitate to give us a call. And so you can't build, and it would be very hard to expect to build a relationship with someone if you only see them, a couple of times a year, once a year, twice a year. So it's important to keep that communication going, especially if you're having concern. So
one of the ones, Kelly, I was just going to share that was put in the questions area. The suggestion was contacting your school district, which is, and finding out more from them and learning from them, because that's a great opportunity to take, and it'll help you build that relationship too. They are a wealth of knowledge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is a wonderful suggestion. And I'm sorry, I was just seeing some of the comments. And so I want to let me go ahead and wrap up my story about that issue. It could have been really, really hard to overcome that barrier. And I think about, as I just said to you, you can't build relationships with someone if you don't see them and you don't spend time with them, and the importance of keeping that communication going. So what happened is I went home, and it took me a little while to calm down. And I don't mean that day. It took me a little while. But what I did is I put myself in her shoes. And I thought about how hard it must have been for her to say that to me. And I thought about how much she must care for my son to be willing to throw hands with this crazy woman, And that's exactly what I was acting like. It was awful. And I was thinking how much she really must care about my son in order to do that. So that kind of reframed things for me. And I was able to look at her as someone who really just cared for my child and was willing to do whatever it took to make sure that he was cared for. And then that caused me to have a great deal of respect for her. And then she kind of went home and basically did the same thing. She evaluated how she spoke to me and the things that she said to me and how she behaved. And although our next few visits with one another, they were different, that ended up becoming not only a phenomenal personal relationship and a relationship, with a provider and child, but we also developed a professional relationship, and she had me coming to her office and training her staff. And I can't tell you what that meant to me knowing the history that she and I how it could have turned out. And so I just want you to know that you can keep communication going. You do want to evaluate where the people you're speaking with are coming from and what their thoughts are, and really be critical and intentional about thinking through things like that, especially if there are areas of concern. So some positive ways to keep in touch, maybe send them a card. A happy Monday. I love it when people send me something that says happy Monday, because I usually am not thrilled on Monday morning. And it makes me really happy for somebody to send me a smiley face and say happy Monday. You may also,
Oh, wait, I don't.
Sure.
I was just going to tell you, I don't know if it froze, or I don't think you're on the next slide.
Oh, I haven't moved on yet. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
And then you may also want to keep a notebook that goes back and forth with your child's school, or you can, I'm sorry, it did freeze. I apologize, Rhonda. So, keep in touch between meetings. Stop in and say hello. You may even want to volunteer at your child's. And I think, this falls, here at the, second on the list, the communicating concerns early. You do not want to, write down a notebook full of things that are going wrong and then shoot them an 8-page email about all the things that are bad, for the whole year. Whenever you have a concern, communicate that with them right away, because you don't want it to get out of hand. You don't want it to fester like a splinter. I don't even know if that's a word, but that's what we always called it growing up, was fester. You don't want it to get worse. And you can do that by communicating those concerns early. And so setting the tone of the meeting. Bring a picture of the child. Some people might think that's silly, but it's not, especially if the child is too young to participate in those meetings or appointments. Bring a picture so you can remain child-focused. Ask each person to share something positive about that child right from the beginning. And then also bring a treat. Everybody likes to eat. So brownies, cookies, just something to kind of right away set that tone, break the tension. Food is universal language, and it's a great one to share. And then obviously work toward resolving differences of opinion. So you can find creative ways. Just like Amber said on here, self-reflection is very important. Absolutely, and it's critical to resolving differences of opinion. Okay, so this slide, we're going to talk for just a second about asking questions. So you want to be sure to ask questions in a way that you want them answered. So you can say, did my son do well today? Check yes or no. That's the kind of answer you're going to get. Did my son do well today? Yes. You might get a very well, or you might get a no, not at all. But it's going to be a very basic answer. So you want to try to stay away from closed-ended questions. Did my son do well today? Like I said, this is helpful if you only need a simple one-word or two-word response that just communicates a simple yes or no. So another way you can ask a question, again, keeping the question, keeping it in mind the way you would like them answered, is what did my son do well today? That answer requires an explanation. You may want to know if your child had any behaviors or if there was any areas of concern. So you might even say, was there anything today that I need to work on? with my son. Just, again, be conscientious of the way you want your question answered so that you ask it appropriately. So again, like I said before, what did my son do well today? This is the type of question to ask if you want a detailed response. Those types of questions, both closed-ended and open-ended, are good, but again, just to reiterate, you want to focus on which type of question serves your need for the information that you're looking for. For differences of opinion, use the acronym LOOK. So it's funny that we talk about acronyms, but LOOK. So listen to and restate the other person's opinion. Use a respectful tone. Compromise or change your opinion if necessary. And keep in mind, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to compromise in certain situations. And then know and state the reasons for opinions. So if you're in an ARC meeting and you say, my child needs a one-on-one aid, you need to be able to back up that opinion with supporting evidence. You need to be able to state exactly why you feel the way you do. And then remember that the people you're working with, they also care for your child. And I think about that woman every time. There was a couple of different presentations where this story sparked in my memory, and I think of her fondly. But it's a great thing that I think of her fondly because it could have turned out so much differently. But I really was able to focus on that she behaved the way she did. She said the things she did. She acted the way she did, ultimately because she cared for my son. We also, again, like I said before, we need to remember that parents have such important information to share. They're a valuable part of a team. And often parental input gets really overlooked, or parents are at a table or at a meeting just because, they're required to be, but their opinions or perspectives maybe aren't valued like they should be. But a parent knows their child better than anyone. They know their child inside out. They're that one constant that's not going to go away. Once you become a child's parent, you don't unbecome a child's parent. And everyone needs to recognize that role that parents play. And then you can also have a big impact on collaborative communication. And this is speaking specifically to parents. Have that confidence. You have that power. You have such an impact on the communication between yourself and professionals. Like I'm instructing you to take cues from the people you're working with, they also will take cues from you. So this presentation is, it's kind of summed up here. Coming together is a beginning. Working together for a common goal is progress. And good collaborative communication is a success. And I'm looking at this and I realize that when we saved this presentation, some things got changed. So we'll fix that. But the content is the same. Coming together is a beginning. Working together for a common goal is progress. And good collaborative communication is success.
And not to worry, Kelly, on the PDF that everyone will access through the handouts and through the other, it's not like that. It's just when we converted it to be able to show it, guys. So sorry.
Perfect. Thank you. And so we have included some links for you, and I know these links have also been shared in the chat box or questions box. I'm not sure which one you have or if you have both. But these are some resources that we have. They're also going to be in your follow-up email. So we've given you plenty of opportunities to access them. These are fabulous, fabulous resources. And then finally, I just would like to stop before we talk about evaluations to see if anyone has any questions or comments. Amber, do you see anything?
I am not.
Okay. Let's see. If someone says here, I don't see the resources, I think they're being added again as we speak. And then, like I said, they are also going to be in your follow-up email. And then let's see if I go back a slide to show you. When you receive
click on those.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. When you receive this PowerPoint, all these are clickable links. So you'll be able to go straight to each one. And these are phenomenal resources. These are resources that I send to parents often, especially when they're having a really hard time in those ARC meetings and they feel like their voice isn't being heard. Just some great practical tips on what you can do right now. So does anybody else have any questions or anything they would like to add? Okay, well, here we have a QR code if you would like to take our evaluation. It's also going to be prompted when we close the webinar. It will pop up automatically. And then I believe there's going to be another link in your follow-up email. So again, we've given you plenty of opportunity to take our evaluation. We take our evaluations very, very seriously. We listen to the feedback that is given. We try to become better based on what you say. If you have any additional requests or something you think that you should do a training on, there is a place in the evaluation, I believe, to, add a comment. So let us know if there's something that you'd like to know more about that we can, that we can provide for you. Please let us know. And like I said, you can use the QR code, the link in the email as it's provided, or when the webinar ends, it'll pop up automatically. And then, of course, if you have any questions or you need any type of assistance that we can help you with, training and information is a big, giant wheelhouse, then please reach out to us. Here is our email address, our website, our phone numbers. So plenty of ways to get in touch with us if you need us now or in the future. And if I remember correctly, and I apologize for not having it written down, I believe we'll be back with you on Wednesday with Laura Beard from the Pritchard Committee, and she will be talking about how to get involved at your child's school. And Laura is the Family Engagement Coordinator, I think, is her title. I'm not looking at it, so if I get it wrong, I apologize. But Laura is amazing, and I absolutely cannot wait to hear what she has to share with everyone. So we thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to see you again Wednesday, and you just let us know if there's anything we can do for you in the meantime. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.